Good morning. I'm Bill Zortman, and welcome to our It's Your Business show. We're at show 3399 in our original It's Your Business series. Our Midwest communications stations around the country observed the 5th as a holiday for the 4th, so we're back in business this morning. Now, we talked about it in our Friday show, but didn't have Butch Warrington with us to share the first half of the year on the building and the remodeling numbers. He helps us launch this morning. Butch, are you with us?
I am with you.
And we've got this Jodi Schwan person. Do you know Jodi?
Oh, Jodi and I are good friends.
Oh, well, how about Tony Bachman? Do you know him?
I do not know Tony. I've never met him.
Well, he's a part of the report card show, and he has been studying really hard your numbers and the trends we have, and we've never done this. You know, in 10 years of doing the report card show or doing this kind of show, we've never brought the three-legged stool in, and we've got that this morning. But, Butch, there's a reason for it, that $500 million after roughly 6 months of the year.
Yeah, that's kind of amazing, isn't it?
So how did that happen?
A lot of projects is what it is. I haven't issued anything over about $25 million this year, but we've had a lot of good projects that size or a little smaller than that. So, and they just keep coming in. I can tell you right now, last year at this time, we had 2 plans that we were looking at that was in the queue, so our plans examiners could get right on them. Right now, we've got about 20 in the queue. So when you bring something in, sorry to say, it's about a month before we get to review it. However, that's the difference between 2 and 20.
So when we talk about that, could a residential house be in the queue? Could it be a big business in the queue? How do we understand what's in there?
Well, it's mainly the commercial projects that we're talking about, anything that needs a review, whether it's a remodel or addition or a new building. The residential, we have a residential plans examiner, and he takes care of all of that, and usually within 2 days, maybe 3 at the most, we'll have those guys out with their permits.
Jodi, when you listen to what he's talking about and you realize that single-family units, 475 this year, 330 last year, townhomes, 247 to 164, multiple family units, 1,031 to 284, what do you see in those numbers, and where do you see us going the last 6 months of the year?
Yeah, it's just unbelievable, isn't it? Good morning, Butch. Good morning, Tony. And thanks for having me on the show, Bill. Okay, let's talk multifamily first of all, because when Butch talks about what's in the queue, you know, not all plan reviews are created equal, let's just say. Some of them take a lot more time and intensity. They're just more complicated to review, and multifamily certainly fits that category. So when you think about all of the apartment projects that have come in this year, and we know there are more yet to come that have not gotten started, right, Butch? Those take a lot of time because there's so much happening within a multifamily building. So that's part, I think, of what's driving the activity within the planning and the zoning and the building services offices. But I mean, the diversity of projects, as Butch said, is the headline here, right? To be at $500 million through the first half of the year without a single project in excess of $30 million says so much. And when you look at the projects that we have talked about that are really significant that have not come through yet, in some cases they won't even come through this year. Let's be candid there. These are just companies that are announcing a little bit farther out, but there's a lot of building activity yet to occur this year. I think of downtown. I think of the 2 big projects, the Steel District and the expansion of Sharapa Place, that have not permitted yet, that both are scheduling groundbreakings for the 3rd or early in the 4th quarter. So those are yet to come. We've got more manufacturing coming, I know. We've certainly got more residential, I know, that would like to get started. So this has just been really an unprecedented start to the year.
Tony Bachman with us this morning. When you look at the numbers and you know what's happened in the last 6 days, 6 days beyond this report, what are you seeing and the kind of questions are you answering?
Well, I mean, to Jodi and Butch's comments here. I think we're just been an unprecedented area when it comes to the city of Sioux Falls and what we're used to. And I think what I'm getting for questions and some of the just general public when we're talking is they're trying to wrap their head around all this. And so I think that there's just a lot of moving parts here. And thanks to people like Butch and Jodi who are trying to convey this information so people can kind of get a grasp of what's happening. Because I think because prices have been doing what they're doing, builders and developers are, doing everything they can to reply to this. I just think that, and we don't see anything changing. I mean, and Butch and Jodi can speak to this too, is that, when I look at like a 5-year trend or a 10-year trend, assuming we don't have some major collapse in the economy, Sioux Falls is going to continue to do what we're doing right now, and I don't see any major changes.
So, Butch, when you hear Tony talk about that, there seems to be no interruption of service, no interruption of people looking. The interest that we have still seems to be out there. Are we talking about $1 billion a year? Is that what we're talking about?
I think it's a possibility at this point in time because, like Jodi said, we've got some bigger projects that we haven't seen yet, and I know they're probably going to be wanting to push for some of this. So I think it is a very possible year, and, we just snuck under $920 million. That would take $80 million more than last year. That's a lot.
Jodi, what's your thought? Do you think we'll cross that $1 billion number?
Oh, I think so. And, Butch, we didn't even talk about healthcare. There's some big healthcare projects that I think we are going to see come in yet this year, and maybe even some things we've not detailed out yet. So I absolutely do. And, let's keep in mind, too, that prices keep going up, right? So if we looked at new residential, for example, and we compared the permit value of that to a few years ago, it's going to be higher because the costs are higher. So the valuation goes up. So, I think we have to factor a little bit of that in. But the sheer volume is just incredible. I do think housing is a separate conversation, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. My sense is that maybe the market is settling down just a little bit. I would be curious for Tony's insight on that. I think sellers perhaps should be aware that I think you're still going to get a very good price for your home, but maybe you're not going to get a crazy price anymore. I just kind of sense that we're seeing a little bit of moderation there. New construction, though, continues to be well ahead of last year, and the supply still needs so much help. So I hope we do see more building permits coming in on the residential side yet this year. I definitely think we will.
Tony, you were asked.
Yeah, well, I think to that point, we've just seen this really radical appreciation over the last 6 to 9 months. And I think that's the part where people have a tough time wrapping their head around, where all of a sudden you had a home like in the last September that was selling for $230, and in that same neighborhood, now you have homes that are selling for $265 and $270, and essentially the same home. Now, to that point, do these $265 homes all of a sudden go up to $300? No. I think what we're going to see is we're going to see the appreciation level off just a little bit, because we were seeing double-digit appreciation in a real short period of time. But we still have that low inventory level, and so there's still this high demand. And we've been talking about what's the cost of waiting in this marketplace, and we have some examples we'll share later. But we're still pro housing in reference to act now, because these prices are going to continue to go up.
Jodi, stupid question, but I'll ask you anyway. I've been known to ask dumb questions before. As big as we're getting inside the city limits of Sioux Falls, why are we not expanding Sioux Falls and the boundaries? That would seem to create a lot more interest, more services. Is that something you see as probable?
Well, I think Butch could maybe speak to this a bit better. We do continue to annex, right? But in some cases, we're limited by infrastructure. So the South Side is the best example of that. Good luck finding a home in South Sioux Falls in many cases, and there is incredible demand for it. The lots are not there in most cases, or if they are absolutely at a premium, and yet it's not sewerable. So we don't have the infrastructure to expand the city limits to the south at this point. We do to the west, and I think you will continue to see some of that annexation occurring. And then we've got all this land still to the east. And what's interesting is we've seen a lot of building on the southeast, and I feel like that's now inching toward the northeast. So I think you're going to see a lot of new development occurring in that northeast, but just that overall east side, because we still have a lot of sewerable acres yet to develop out there. So that to me is where those Sioux Falls addresses are going to continue to be pushing, largely to the east, somewhat to the west. We're just maxed out to the south. Geographically, we've got a lot of barriers to the north, but that's kind of how I see that shaping up.
Remodeling numbers too, Butch. When we look at those, we see that the commercial remodeling is at $120.5 million this year, $59 million a year ago. People are remodeling; they're improving what they have.
This is true. They are putting money into the buildings they have. So and adding on to some additions. And, of course, one of those big additions is that was about a $20 million project, was the Avera Behavior Health. And some of those are additions that are big, so it does get with the numbers a little bit.
The other thing that we're seeing projects that are going to happen in 23. We're hearing about the pork plant. It would be 2025. I mean, we're looking out a long ways, Jodi, when we start looking and saying this is where we are in 2021. That's 2 years. That's 4 years.
Right, and these are going to be multi-year permits in some cases, too. We'll see how they bring them in. So we may not be able to point to 1 year, for instance, and say, well, this was because of XYZ project. But these are huge. We have multiple projects coming valued at $500 million, which I'm told in some cases is even conservative. So when those permits come in, that's going to be significant. And they continue to look. These companies continue to reach out. They continue to meet with the city leaders and the economic development teams. We have talked about Foundation Park, and they are, selling land pretty rapidly, I would say. I mean, they've got a handful of rail sites left, but they're now developing that north end of the park. I feel like there's going to be conversations about more land, and that's just one development. You look out to where the Holstone project is going in the northeast. There is some land remaining out there yet. And then we've got a lot of existing businesses that are looking to grow. And essentially here, I think we've got multiple years of business activity packed into one, right? Because we have businesses that might have thought about doing something last year and held off. We have businesses that frankly had really good financial years in 2020 and are continuing that in 2021. And they're looking at making those investments because to Tony's point, if you're a business, what's the cost of waiting on construction or land acquisition? Often there really is a cost. So while we had a fabulous start to 2021, I do think it might be the beginning of a theme based on everything that's in that pipeline.
Butch, I always ask you what's in the pipeline. You talked a little bit about 20 in the queue, but what do you anticipate, and who needs a building permit?
We do have some good plans coming in. We've got, as we were talking, some more apartments. There's about 4 or 5 different apartment complexes coming in. And the Furniture Mart out on Hanks Lane is going to put a real nice addition out there. So that's one of the good things. And, of course, I like Augustine is putting up a residence hall. I like to see our colleges grow like that, or universities grow. And anybody who's doing any work, and with whether it's building, electrical, plumbing, mechanical, they all need building permits.
Jodi, you have attended the conference out in Vegas for a number of years. Haven't had it because of COVID in recent years, but what was the feel on Sioux Falls, and what was bringing businesses here?
On the retail side, the national side, I think it's still sort of this process of discovery around Sioux Falls. There are some national names that didn't always have Sioux Falls on the radar, and I definitely feel like that's been this steady evolution of gaining their attention and gaining their interest. And then, frankly, they look at how other comparable retailers perform. So if I took the Empire Mall, for example, we have a number of national retailers within the mall that are putting up numbers that are, in some cases, the best in the company or near the best in the company. And other comparable retailers look at this and they realize the strength of the market and they realize the draw, and that encourages them to look here. I think our biggest challenge in retail right now almost is becoming space. We do have some space available, but I know there's interest in what is out there. Not a ton for big box retail, as we call it. So if you wanted to come in with a 50 to 100,000 square foot store or bigger, your options would be kind of limited right now. Of course, that's not necessarily who's growing in retail, but it is a factor. On the restaurant side, the biggest thing is staffing. So I can't tell you how many I've talked to that would like an additional location or would like to come into the market, and they're putting a pause on it because they are concerned about being able to hire. Even bank branches, I'm hearing, are holding off some of their timing because they're concerned about staffing up. So that is a real issue, not just in retail, of course, as we've talked about, but across so many sectors, and not just in Sioux Falls, all over the country, but perhaps a little more acutely here in Sioux Falls.
Butch, appreciate your visit. We got the remodelers coming up in a couple of weeks. We'll be checking with you next week to see how you've moved the needle. Jodi, and if you want to post this online, this might be a good one to post online if you get a chance.
I think so. Norm can help us out there, right? So
he
send me
can.
that clip, Norm. We'll get it posted.
All right, Tony's going to stay over. We're going to talk about 2008 versus today. That's next.